Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in, being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about the case of the 6-year-old in Virginia who shot his teacher. We're going to be checking in with our special guest, Ashley Banks of the Rio, to give us the latest in that story and how it could change the laws in the state of Virginia and possibly around the country. We'll have that conversation. Also, we're going to be checking in with Mayor Katrina Thompson of Broadview, Illinois, to talk about how small cities are on the front line of big change. We'll have that conversation and a whole lot more. So, folks, get ready to join us in the discussion. Make sure that y'all stay tuned in. We got a lot coming at you right here on today's edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show and happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you. We got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right in. I got a number of fantastic voices, folks, as we have these conversations. All right, folks, the big discussion right now, we want to talk about this case of the 6-year-old student in Virginia who shot at his teacher. And this case has so many different layers about everything from school safety to access to guns. And we're going to talk about this issue of the fact that the gun culture in this country continues to be such an epidemic that has gone all the way down to the babies. And so I want us to have that part of the conversation as we check in with our special guest, Ashley Banks, who is a journalist and reporter for the Griot. And we also, of course, got my sister, Suzette Speaks, our culture crew member for today. And I'm very, very excited to see them both. Ashley is in school to be a lawyer, and Suzette is a lawyer. So I'm looking forward to the conversation this afternoon. First and foremost, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Farajii. Doing pretty good.
Awesome. Suzette, how are you?
Doing well. Good to be here, brother. And nice to have you, Ashley. Welcome.
Awesome. All right, let's talk a little bit about this case, ladies, because when I first heard about this case, I was kind of blown away about the details. And there was a lot of fuzziness around what actually happened. But the story is coming out because the latest development is the fact that Ashley, that this teacher, fortunately, she was shot, but it was not a fatal shot. But she is moving forward on some legal action. Talk to us about that.
That's correct, Farajii. So as we know, on January 6th, the 6-year-old shot the first grader in the hand, and the bullet went through her chest. The teacher was hospitalized for about 2 weeks, but she's been released now. She still has to undergo physical therapy, and her lawyer has spoken and said she's going through psychological changes and challenges as well. But recently, the new news is that the teacher has filed a suit against the school district, citing that this could have been prevented. This incident did not need to take place. So right before the shooting took place, or hours before the shooting took place, several teachers went to the administrator basically saying this child is troubled, this child is threatening to beat up another child. In 2 other cases, teachers went to the administrator and said that the 6-year-old was in possession of a gun. The administrator they didn't care. They weren't bothered. They did not want to search the child's book bag. They did not want to deal with the situation. And then we saw the aftermath where the kid opened fire intentionally, as the police chief says, purposely shot the first grader in the hand and through the chest. Now, the 6-year-old was able to obtain this gun from his parent. It says that the parents legally bought this gun, and the parents are claiming that the gun was legally secured and there's no way that the child could have gotten the gun. There is also new news that this child had an acute disability, and was supposed to be accompanied by a parent every day to class. But for some reason on this day, the child was not accompanied by a parent. So I find that to be very interesting. But just back to the point of why this first grader is suing the school, it's simply the administration did absolutely nothing and left the teacher stranded, essentially. If it worked for another teacher who heard the shooting taking place and came to apprehend the student, who knows what could have happened after that? Students could have been shot, right? The teacher could have been fatally wounded. Other instances could have taken place. It could have got even further than what we saw. But this is a situation that could have been prevented. And now the school has implemented some security measures, essentially, where now they're saying there's going to be a full-time security guard on campus. There's going to be a fully staffed front office, and they're going to have metal detectors. And they're also debating whether students should be carrying clear backpacks so that they can see at all times what these kids are carrying into the school. And today, the school board is actually voting on whether the superintendent should be removed from his position. And if he is, there is going to be a separation agreement and a severance package, which a lot of people are like up in arms about. But Farajii, as we know, the superintendent is not the only one that should be blamed in this situation. Several teachers went to different administrators raising alarms, right? Raising these red flags about this one student, and simply these teachers were ignored. And so I believe that there are other people that should be held responsible. And in terms of the parents, right now, no one has been charged, and it's not clear whether they will be held responsible for the 6-year-old getting access to this weapon.
All right, so a couple of things, Ashley, and then Suzette, I want to get your take on this, but a couple of things. One is that I've read that there were 3 warnings on the day of the shooting. 3. And that essentially, like you mentioned in your reporting, that they just felt like they weren't bothered. Why was that? Why didn't they take? Was there any indication in the story as to why those administrators or those of staff members did not take those warnings seriously?
It's not clear, but I did read a quote, which from one of the teachers who came to an administrator in the hours before the shooting. And the administrator said, the day is almost over. Why bother? I'm not sure if I'm not going to make excuses, but I'm not sure if the administration was overwhelmed. It is clear that they want a fully staffed front office now. So maybe there weren't enough hands on deck and they could have felt like they were stretched. But essentially, they're just like, the day's almost over. There's no need to deal with trouble. We're about to leave. The kids are about to go home. Let's just leave this for another day or another administrator. But there's no excuse for that. If somebody is saying to you, or a teacher rather, one of your teachers in your school may fear for their lives or the safety of their students, you need to take that seriously. I'm sure this isn't a situation that you hear of every day in this school where several teachers are coming up to you saying, I believe the student has a gun. I believe the student has a gun. I believe some of us are in danger. This kid is making threats about harming other students, about harming other people in this school. And the fact the administration's just like, whatever. Day's almost over. Let's move on. That's unreasonable. That's ridiculous. And more people need to be held responsible for the situation.
Very quickly, Suzette, before we take our first pause, I'm wondering, this sort of kind of like negligence from the staff is not something that's uncommon, unfortunately. You would think that in a time where we are seeing a lot of mass shootings, and we reported on here on this show, based on the new numbers, that just in the first 3 weeks of 2023, we have over 36 mass shootings, now 37 with this latest one with 7 people in California, outside of the 10 that were just killed just a few days ago. So you have 37 mass shootings happening in this country. You would think that at the moment somebody says gun and student, that it would just sound the alarm, especially given what happened in Uvalde, Texas.
Well, we definitely have to wait until the facts fully unfold. And I think based on Ashley's reporting, based on what the attorney for the teacher says, there was warning. There was an alarm, if you will, set off by teachers and
Right.
that administration allegedly ignored them. I'm sure they're going to come with a different set of facts or try to defend what they did or did not do. So I would say we are going to have to wait until both sides get to kind of plead their case in a court of law.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with it. We got to take a quick pause, ladies, but when we come back, I want to get your take on how we are looking at this gun culture in America, folks. There are so many guns, and unfortunately, we're seeing in cases like this where babies are finding guns in their home and wherever their parents are putting them, getting access to them, and bringing them to public places to harm other folks. Folks, we have a very, very real problem with guns in our country. And it's not just with adults now, it's down to the babies. We want to have that part of the conversation. So folks, stay with us, join us in the discussion, post your comments in our chat as we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and of course, blackstarnetwork.com. And let's continue the conversation when we come forward. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back. We've been talking about the case of the 6-year-old student in Virginia who shot at his teacher. It was not a fatal shot, but it was a shot that certainly damaged the teacher psychologically and, of course, physically. But this was the case where the 6-year-old was able to have access to a gun, bring it to school, and during an argument with the teacher, shoots her right there on school grounds. Now, I've been talking to Ashley Banks of the Griot, to have our culture crew member, Suzette Speaks, TV host and attorney in Florida, and talking about the implications of this case, especially around the conversations about gun culture and so much more, and of course, school safety. So Suzette, and Ashley, getting back to this piece that, if we, Suzette, you said we got to get all the details of the case, right?
Yes.
Because I think, number one, everybody's asking the question, well, how the hell, and this is what Ming Lee Natasha serves. Ming Lee, you pointed out you went into my head, Ming Lee. You said, how the hell can a 6-year-old get a hold of a gun?
Mm-hmm.
And that's my question.
Yeah.
And we reported it on this show. There are 300, check this out, Ashley and Suzette, 393 million guns right now in the United States. There are more guns than there are people. Let me just say that for y'all. And y'all might be like, man, my Second Amendment. There are more guns that people have than there are actual citizens of this country. So how does that happen? How did you get a 6-year-old? How does the 6-year-old get access to a gun, Suzette?
Well, based on the reporting, it seems like it belonged lawfully to the mother. She claims that she did not know that the child had access to said gun and brought it to school, as we now know. But this may lead to, and the sheriff during a press conference a few days ago did highlight that this could lead to charges that the mother may be culpable, may be responsible for not having properly secured the firearm and having allowed the child to take it to school, even though she says she did not know that he took it to school with him. The teacher has a very interesting case, as her lawyer laid out through Ashley's reporting. If she did in fact warn administration, like she said she did, if she did let them know earlier, few hours before the shooting took place, that there was a rumor on campus that this child was known by other students to have a gun. In the reporting, it also said that another child in a class before this class said that he was shown the gun, and that the student who ultimately committed the shooting threatened to shoot him. And if these warning signs were in fact parts of what took place leading up to this teacher being shot, this school, and even possibly the school board, any other entities that this attorney could possibly hold liable, could possibly face real charges for what is really going to be what you call negligence. So this is bringing us into what is called tort law. I don't want to give the lawyer 101, but a tort is any incident or lack thereof that creates an injury or harm that ultimately can be found as a liability under a court of law. So if they omitted, if they did not act, and this teacher said she warned administration, or others at the school warned administration, there is going to be an issue here. Now, there's also their side, which did state in the reporting that they searched the bag at one point of the child and did not find a weapon. Now, again, all of these are allegations. We do not know until we can get the facts in before a judge or a jury. But it does leave us with a lot of questions as to, this child having possibly a history of difficulties in terms of mental health and otherwise, or behavioral issues, and what should have occurred, what did not occur, or what should have occurred under the circumstances that are being laid out by this teacher's attorney.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Deidre, you're the one that posted that point, and I want to make sure I'm correct, because I don't want my online culture crew getting mad at me, Ashley. Deidre, you're the one that asked the question. First of all, how the hell does a 6-year-old get access to a gun? So I apologize for that. Ming Lee, you posted this is a warning red alert emergency. And Ashley, I'm wondering, Suzette pointing out that tort law, the lawsuits is going to happen. So it sounds like in my little small menial law understanding that she does have a case here.
100%.
Ashley, what's your take on that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, when it comes to tort law, I'm not a lawyer like Suzette. So Suzette.
Not yet, Ashley.
Not yet. A couple years, I will be. But essentially, the administration does owe her a duty to at least listen, or to at least see if what she's saying has some merit. When she came to her and the other teachers came to, when the teachers came to the administration saying, the student possibly has a gun, or the student has behavioral issues and is threatening to hurt another student, the administration's job, they have a duty to ensure that the grounds of that school are safe, to ensure that the teacher's safety is okay and being upheld, and that student safety is being upheld. But if the administration failed to do that, then certainly the teacher here has a case. But like Suzette's saying, we have to see the facts play out. There is an investigation underway, and the investigation, hopefully if done properly, will be able to weed out what's true, what's not. And if it comes out that the administration really did fail and that they did not search this bag like they're saying that they did, then they have a case. Then this first grade teacher has a case. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But there was negligence here.
But Ashley and Suzette, what do we make of, and Ashley, I'll start with you on this one. What do we make of the fact that, you have this very strong gun culture in this country? We don't talk enough about the fact that you got teenagers, preteens, and small children that have access to these guns. As much as you got these 393 million guns in the country, that all of those gun owners aren't responsible. they might leave it in a place that's easily accessible. I mean, we've been hearing about students bringing guns to school for years. People act like Columbine was the first time we heard about a school shooting. It was one of the big ones, but students, I mean, I remember growing up in Baltimore and, back in the 80s, you heard about students bringing guns to school. And so it's like, that is still prevalent. And now it's gotten even crazier, Ashley, at this point where it's now, you got a 6-year-old bringing the guns to school. How do we have a different conversation, either with the gun makers, gun lobby, or even with political officials, to get beyond this just talking about policy and to get in some real action about gun control?
Honestly, Farajii, I don't know the answer to that. We have seen way too many shootings take place in school. We have seen too many loss of life when it comes to students, when it comes to your average adult, whether they be in a club in Orlando, what we just saw took place over the weekend in California. It's like, when is enough going to be enough? I think that's the real question here. Because there are the people like you and I and Suzette who are just like, something needs to be done. We need to protect students and we need to protect your everyday American. But it seems like the GOP, members of the GOP, are not truly interested in making sure that we have legislation that makes sense for all of us, but also looks out for the greater good of humans. And so recently, there were Democratic senators who proposed legislation where you would ban assault weapons and raise the age of purchasing a gun to 21. And all of that sounds great. You mentioned the fact that there are like 391 million guns here in America, but those are the guns that are accounted for. Those aren't even the ghost guns. They aren't the guns that aren't being recorded, that don't have serial numbers. And so essentially, having guns in this country is not something that can be stopped or will be stopped, in my opinion. It's a big business, a huge business for people to have guns, to own guns, all that jazz. But at the same time, Democrats can propose as much legislation as they want. It's the other side of the aisle who has to agree to it and implement it. But I just don't see it happening anytime soon. And I believe it's very unfortunate because we're going to see more of these mass shootings. We're going to see more lives lost senselessly when these things could be prevented. But until members of the GOP want to see something done, I just don't think anything's going to take place.
Very quickly, Suzette, I've read a piece in the New York Times the other day where it talks about gun control needs to make sense, that there needs to be we need to use the harm reduction model. And one of the elements of the harm reduction model is to raise the age of people who are actually purchasing guns. That in some cases, in some states, you can be 18 years old. And we've seen these in some of these mass shootings. 18 years old, you can get a gun just like that. But then in other states, you have to be like 21 years old. You have to go through all of these loops. Is the law enough? Because I'm a believer in this. Like, law is fine, but there's something inherently wrong about the thinking that leads to the behavior of individuals that want to pull the trigger. So is the law enough? Should we all put our eggs in that basket?
I think it is a strong mechanism that we are not really utilizing on a national basis. I think the issue becomes, as I think it was Gavin Newsom, governor of California, pointed out, California has one of the most strictest gun law frameworks in our country, but you can go across the border and drive down to Arizona or another neighboring state to buy your gun if you so choose. So I think what's lacking here is a national framework where Congress has instituted these age restrictions or other means of background checks or red flag laws or whatever, so that we have more tools, law enforcement have more tools, and quite frankly, judges, because there can be injunctions as well when people are mentally ill, and trying to use every opportunity from a national perspective, I think is what's missing. We have patchworks of gun laws around our country. So therefore, I don't think we're going to have any reprieve right now until Congress itself musters up the courage to do something.
Well, Congress can't even muster up the courage to admit when somebody is lying. That
part. For real.
So now we're going to have to talk about something that saves lives. Real Brooklyn, my guy, you checked in and said, look, what you said? You said, I'm sure even with all the mass shootings that's been happening in America, I'm pretty sure the teacher did not wake up that morning thinking a 6-year-old would shoot her. Now we got to worry about that. Teachers are under attack in this country. I don't care how much we try to put to sugar on top of this, how many apples we grow for them. The reality is teaching is a very, very serious job. But now you got to think about, being so serious that you might have to go to school with extra precaution that a student may bring a gun to class. And I'm not talking about high school. I'm talking about elementary school. And that's too much, Ashley. Too much. What can we expect? We got 30 seconds, but what can we expect from moving forward with this case?
Yeah, so moving forward, looks like the superintendent could be out as early as tonight. We're waiting on that vote this evening. If the superintendent is out, then the board will be voting on a interim superintendent, but it looks like they're ramping up security at that school. Right now, school is out of session until January 30th as they continue to investigate. But we know more details will come out of this, Farajii.
Yep, absolutely. My sister Ashley Banks checking in from the Griot. Ashley, it's always a pressure. I only appreciate you being a part of the conversation. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, and nice meeting you, Suzette.
You too. Hope to see you again.
Yes,
Two great legal minds, bringing them together. That's what we do here in the culture. All right, folks, look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's have a conversation with Mayor Katrina Thompson of Broadview, Illinois. We're going to talk about how small cities are on the front lines of big change. So stay tuned for that discussion up next here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back. We are now going to shift gears from talking about what's happening in school stuff, what's happening in cities across the country. Now, last week we had an opportunity just for a few moments to talk to one mayor, our beloved sister, Mayor Katrina Thompson of Broadview, Illinois, to just talk to us a little bit about what's happening. And she gave her take on the conversation about the fight against history and what we're seeing in Florida. Well, we brought our sister back on because we wanted to spend more time to learn about the work that she's doing in Broadview, a small city that is really on the front line of making big changes. And so we're welcoming back to the airwaves of Black Star Network and to the culture, our beloved sister, Mayor Katrina Thompson. Madam Mayor, good afternoon. How are you today?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Let's look at you, Madam Mayor. You flexed it and everything. You in a whole different vibe and spirit today.
Yeah, well, I'm at work today.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. And I want to bring in my sister, Suzette Speaks. Again, folks, she's a TV host and lawyer out of Florida, and she's going to be, of course, continuing the conversation with the mayor as we have these discussions with the mayor. But first, let me pose this question, and then, Suzette, you run with your questions. Let's have this conversation. But, Madam Mayor, you know, people may not have heard of Broadview, Illinois. Talk to us a little bit about the great city that you represent and serve.
So Broadview is the strongest small city in the state of Illinois. We're 8,000 residents, a 2.2-mile radius. We are third residential, third industrial, and third commercial. So we're a well-balanced community. We are 74% African-American, but our Hispanic population is growing. We are thriving in the right direction, bringing new opportunities to our community. And just, you know, we just want to work in collaboration with our neighboring communities.
And what are some of the big industries there in Broadview, Madam Mayor?
So we have manufacturing, which food manufacturers, Mullen Foods, Benny Foods, Perfumes, and they do some of the larger, like the sauces for the McDonald's and all of that type of stuff. Right.
So, you know, it's the small things, but it makes a big difference in the food industry. And hey, somebody's got to produce this stuff. So I'm so happy that that it comes out of your city. But talk to us a little bit about your tenure as mayor of Broadview.
So when I first got elected, well, let me just say this. I didn't grow up in a political family, so politics was just not on my radar at all. But as I got into this arena, I know that I wanted to be a game changer for how we look at how we function as Black folks in the community and how we move the needle just a little bit further. You know, we have so many things that plague our community that Black elected officials have to focus on so many different things that our colleagues don't have to really, they focus on, but it's not an importance to them. So I like to change the narrative and flip the script on how we look at how we get access to resources, how we take care of our streets, alleys, and sidewalks, how we look at our water infrastructure, how we look at environmental issues, and most certainly how we look at public safety in our fire and our police departments and what that look like, and does that culture align with the residents that live within our community. On election day, when I got elected in 2017, the police chief, I never saw him. He quit. So when I got into office, I didn't even have a police chief. And our police department was made up of primarily white males. We had about 2 or 3 African Americans that's on the police department. Fast forward until now, I've hired our first Black police chief. The department is very diverse. We have more women working on the police department than we have ever had. And so we're just changing the needle a little bit further, but we're being intentional about the work that we do that represent the community that I serve in.
That's awesome. Suzette, what are your questions for Madam Mayor?
I'm curious, Madam Mayor, and welcome. Thank you for being here. When we are talking about some of the distinctions between big cities and smaller communities like the one you serve, are there really that many distinct issues, or do we kind of overlap? For example, I know housing here in Miami is huge. Affordable housing and workforce housing has been one of the biggest challenges, as well as just increases in taxes across the board. We also are environmentally conscious as well, and we are looking for more higher paying industries to come to Miami. For example, in the tech space, we've done a lot of recruiting for those type of companies here so that we can bring higher wage jobs. Are those some of the same issues that you're facing? Are there overlaps, you think, with more urban areas, with what issues that you serve are looking for you to address and hopefully solve?
So there is a difference between large cities, medium cities, and large cities. And some of the distinct differences is the staff and the laborers that you have working on your team. So like I have a small staff. And when we talk about economic development and how we create affordable housing or a workforce type of housing, you have to have a skill set and a leader that's in that respective department that can change the narrative to get you to the resource. And so typically what happens is the resources go to the largest community because they have the largest base of people. And so and it's very competitive. I mean, we have to apply for competitive funding and everything that we do. And sometimes we compete with some of our larger communities. Now, is that fair and equity? Most of the times, no. And then when you talk about being in a Black and brown community, just think if we're small and we in this pool of a community that our neighbors may be 55,000 population, the economics or the socioeconomics are a lot different for us. So it is a difference between small and large communities. But the issues are the same. Like, we still have to have public safety. We still have to have safe drinking water. We still have to, maintain the services for a municipality as a large city, but we just don't have the resources to combat a lot of the issues that we, come up against from time to time.
And I'm glad that Suzette brought up that point, because we tend to kind of overlook the small cities, and when you're talking about, and my guy Real Brooklyn just posted this. He said, when I went to boot camp in Illinois, he said, I don't remember seeing Black folks until I went to Chicago. You know what I mean? And so Real Brooklyn, let me know how long ago was that when you went through that experience. But I'm wondering, for Black people today, is the small town the new alternative that we need to really considering for housing, considering for jobs? Is a small town like Broadview, Illinois, an alternative for us to find our political footing? Because you're a Black woman, you didn't come from a political family, but you're getting things done. You're starting to take the city into a more Black consciousness with your leadership. And so I'm wondering, like, we're not seeing, we may get a little bit here and there in some of these big cities, and understandably, but maybe in the small cities, it might be the best alternative. What's your take on that?
So for me, it's simple. So I speak a lot about partnerships and collaborations. So when you create these partnerships and collaborations, you can do more. And so that's just my mindset. I don't work in a silo. I work with my other neighboring communities. I work with wealthy communities, medium income communities, and poor communities. But once we pull all of those resources together and we get everybody working together, that's when we start seeing real change. Even though our communities' dynamics are different, our socioeconomics are different, but one thing that I've learned is bringing people together to unify for the common goal so that we can flex, as you said. So that we can flex. We can flex more when we work together with all of our, it's a give and take. They want something just like we want something.
Right. And that's the thing about it too, Suzette, right? It's like, we're trying to figure out how we can get some wins out of all of these, out of every place that we're in, and every space that we're in right now in Black America. We should every Black person should be thinking, how can I get a gain from it? And I'm not in a selfish way. No. But in a very real way, like, how can I get a win for myself and my family and my community, my people? Because I'm just personally tired, Suzette and Madam Mayor, of Black folks going into new spaces and we're just thinking about the individual and not thinking about the we or the collective. Suzette, what's your take on that?
Absolutely. To piggyback on what you're saying, I was wondering why Madam Mayor decided to run in the first place, because she said she didn't even come into this from a political background. And sometimes I realize people have a good heart, but they're not good administrators. And it sounds like she's a very good administrator. So I wanted to ask you, what motivated you to do this? And additionally, we've spoken to mayors who are also African-American. Are you the first African-American mayor of your city? Do you feel like you've had special challenges because you were African-American or because you're a woman in leadership? Just curious about those two.
So in Broadview, we had term limits, and the former mayor was terming out. And he asked me to run for the seat 3 times. I turned him down 3 times. And this was a big year for my family. My daughter was graduating from high school. We doing college tours, trying to figure out what she needed to do. But when I asked her, what did she think about me running for mayor? She told me to go for it because I like helping people. So that's why I got into the race. Now I am the first woman, the first Black woman to hold the seat. So when we talk about being a double minority in a political arena, sometimes the challenges come up, and you just have to know your stuff. And I'm intentional about reading. I read all of the legislation that comes across my desk. I don't have staffers to read it for me and then give me the talking points. I build my own talking points.
I love it.
I want to be intentional about the message and how I feel and the people that I represent. They elected me to do a job, and I'm here to serve them at the highest level of excellency, especially being a Black woman, of what we have access to. So when we start bringing all of these resources together and we start sharing and communicate and not getting our feelings or, and all of these things, you can do a lot of great work. But then you get some that, like you said, they get into it for the wrong reason. They think the job is easy. It's not easy. It's a 24/7 position, depending on what activities are going on. But I take care of myself first because I love me first. And I serve a God that put me in this seat. And I do not want to displease God in everything that I do. So I make sure that I'm always focused on what my spirituality is and what I'm focused on. And I listen to the people. Like I have listening sessions or people call me and to give me ideas. I can't do this work by myself. I have an awesome administrative team. I mean, when I say awesome, they are awesome. And we share ideas and concepts. And it's not just all about the mayor seat, because what happens is you get this role and all eyes are on you. And it is a seat of power that I didn't even know about. But it is a seat of power, but I don't want to flex on that power, and I'm not serving the people. Because I want the people to have the power to control the seat.
Let me just tell you this, Madam Man. This is why I love having these conversations with public officials like you and Suzette. We have these discussions all the time. Y'all make me want to leave a big city.
Yeah, listen, I'm about to move.
You know what I'm saying? Like my man Conscious Thought was like, damn, I'm about to visit Broadview like soon. Like I'm right there with you, bro. Like at the end of the day, I'm ready to like make Broadview just a spotlight, because I can hear in your voice, Madam Mayor, with all due sincerity, I can hear the passion, and I can hear the love, and the fact that you're not doing this for likes. You know what I mean? You're doing this to be a true public servant. And I mean, it's so refreshing to see Black folks in a position like that. Because somewhere across in the water, I don't know, as Suzette, we live in big city. You in Miami, I'm in Los Angeles. You know what I'm saying? Like somewhere in the transition or in the translation, it's like people's intentions get muddled, and people's spirit and their involvement in getting in public service just gets very distorted. And I'm so sick and tired of seeing, I mean, they're not bad people, but they just get caught up in a dirty system.
The hype.
They get caught up in the hype.
They do.
And somewhere along the line, it gets, I mean, when we see our people who constantly get caught up in certain situations, and I mean, yeah, they didn't harm anybody technically, but they eroding the trust that we have in Black leadership, Black political.
Well, it's the indirect harm.
Right.
It's not, right. It's not directly harm or it's not physical, but it's the indirect, because when you're not serving at a high level and you're not listening to your constituent base on the things that they want to see you, or you giving them ideas on, where you want to position your town or city or village, it's a fine line with that. And like I said, I'm just brutally honest. I'm very transparent. I don't sugarcoat nothing for nobody. I live in my truth every single day. If the people love me, they love me. If they don't, they don't. I mean, I do have a few people that's not very favorable of me, but I'm very vocal in my position, even when I'm with my white counterparts. I mean, I'm very vocal in my position and where I stand, because if I don't stand on the truth, what am I serving for? And I do understand the dynamics of the political arena now that I've been in it a couple of years. I understand the dynamic of it, but I also understand who I am and whose I am. And I represent, I'm Black, and I'm unapologetic about that. I just cannot live in a space where I can't have self-identity or celebrate my culture or my people or elevate them and give them accolades when the accolade is due, or the children that go to our local schools, they should be happy to see someone like me. I mean, I just signed up for our local school to be a substitute teacher because our reading scores are low in that school. And I know if they see somebody like me that's showing them the love that they need to get them to the next level, I got to do whatever it takes to have a well-educated community where they can go out into the workforce and say, I did that.
There it is. Look, we got to take a quick pause, Suzette. We got to get our ticket soon.
Listen, I'm about to go visit. I'm serious. I'm like, wait a minute. Plus, they got that sweet small town values, I'm sure.
And I'm born and raised in Inglewood, California.
Oh yeah. So you know the big city life. You know what that is all about. That is beautiful. Look, we got to take a quick break. When we come forward, we're going to get some questions from our online culture crew as we continue to talk to Madam Mayor Katrina Thompson of Broadview, Illinois, talking about small cities on the front line of big changes. Folks, join us in the discussion and stay tuned. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking to Madam Mayor Katrina Thompson of Broadview, Illinois, as we're talking about some of the things that she's confronted with and some of the triumphs that she's been able to make as the great mayor of the small city of Broadview, Illinois, where we're talking about small city on the front lines of big change. Let's bring Madam Mayor back into the frame along with my sister, Suzette Speaks. Madam Mayor, when we talk about this, and we were kind of briefly discussing this level of excellence that Black folks who go into office have to be, and there are countless stories, unfortunately, of Black political officials, whether they're on a national level, state level, even on a local level, that seem to get into office, and then next thing you know, their passion fizzles out, their pockets get fatter in some cases. And more importantly, we as the people, the constituents, we still feel like, we're left with, uneasy feelings about Black folks in office. What are you doing in your city that help keep people to be trustworthy, that can trust your leadership, to feel like, this is a woman that has character, that has a certain moral compass and values. How are you able to do that?
So for me, it's just real easy. Like I said, I have 8,000 residents, so I'm small enough to touch every household. And even when I'm not campaigning, I'm still knocking on doors, checking on seniors in the local schools, checking on our children, being out in the community at community events when our Parks and Recs have events. I want to be that person that when it's time for people to vote for me, it's not when I need their vote. It's they know who I am. And I always said, as long as I've been living here, that I never wanted to be the elected official that only wanted people vote and support when it was time to campaign. So they see me all the time. I mean, my residents, they have my cell phone number. They can call me. Social media, I'm engaged on social media with the community. You just have to be accessible. And I just want to be accessible, but I also have a private life too. And I'm real clear in that, you know, even though I'm in the public eye, I still have the right to have a private life. So I share what I want to share when it comes to my private life. And I'm unapologetic about that as well, because I have a choice to share what I want. Now, what's public is public. And I'm happy that I have residents that honor that, and they respect me enough to honor that. I do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Suzette, does this and now Suzette, share your thoughts about, you know, this idea of Black folks and Black in political leadership, because this is something I think that even though we kind of talk about, we only talk about it in light of when something crazy happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, Madam Mayor. Like, do you have maybe a mentor or someone who was able to help you? Or I want to know a little bit more about your background in terms of your ability to manage, you know, several different, it sounds like departments. It sounds like maybe you're a strong mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, where you make the executive decisions for the city. You're not run by a city manager.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the say-so in the hires and the fires and the police chief and what's going on in fire. If you, I don't know if you have a fire department and other things. How did you develop your skill sets? So what happens, I think, sometimes, Farajii, sometimes I don't believe in this across the board, wait your turn philosophy, but I do think we need to prepare ourselves for these moments. And when we're not prepared, sometimes that's when we kind of fall into possible, which I say, unbecoming scenarios. Where, and I'm trying to be politically correct here, but things that kind of get us in trouble, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So how did you prepare? Did you have mentorship? Did that come from you working, you know, in corporate America? Like, where did you develop and hone your skills so that you were ready on day one?
So that's a really good question, because I've had several mentors that have coached me over the years, and for the past 25 years, I've been in executive senior level management. So I've developed those skill sets over the years of my management style, my leadership style, having a formal education, got a couple of degrees. I put that working with the students in the classes and stuff. I put all of those things together to make it work. And then and I have to say this, I'm just a generally nice person. I mean, I don't care what you look like, what your sexual preference is, religion, background. I don't get involved in that. I just care about if you care about people. And I also care about if you care about my people. That's big for me.
Absolutely.
And so I do have a mentor. I have our senator. She's the Senate Majority Leader, Senator Leifer. She's mentored me through this political side of things as it relates to local government, state government, and tapping into some of the federal stuff. So over the years, I've had great mentorship. The Speaker of the House is the first Black speaker for the state of Illinois, Chris Welch. He has been a very good mentor to me. I mean, he was the one who actually taught me how to campaign, what I need to do, what type of clothes I need to wear, how long to stay inside a resident when I'm outside in the frigid elements of the weather here in Illinois. So I've got a great circle of people around me, and I know that I can pick up the phone and call them, text them if something controversy come up, or if I just need to chit chat or get something off of me.
Absolutely.
I don't hold those things. I like to get it off of me so that I can move on.
Okay. Now, Madam Mayor, Pauline Hurt, and thank you for the answer to that question. Pauline Hurt checked in and said, how many law enforcement officers do you have on your force?
So we have currently 28 sworn officers. Our goal is to get back up to 37 sworn officers.
Wow. And when you say smart officers, that different from what we see as the traditional police officer?
No, small.
Oh, small officer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Talk to us a little bit about the relationship that your city has with the largest city of Chicago. How far is Broadview from Chicago, and what is that relationship like, especially even the relationship that you have with your state capital? So
the city of Chicago is about 15 minutes away from here, so we real close. downtown area. So we are west of the city of Chicago.
Okay.
I have a pretty good relationship with the city of Chicago. I was a former executive director for an agency that was funded by the city of Chicago. And during that time, I was under the leadership of Mayor Rahm Emanuel. And then I've since left that and came over to be the mayor in the village of Broadview. So I still have some good relationships with the city. And I will say this about Mayor Lightfoot. I mean, when we got into the pandemic, she wrapped her arms around small communities like Broadview to make sure that we had access, we had the information. She literally took the time out of her day every week on a Sunday to have conference calls with mayors in the Chicagoland region to give us briefing on what was taking place as it related to the pandemic. So with that support and that type of help and that type of leadership, it takes us to another form of how we look and how we serve our community. And we're talking about relationships. So these are relationships that I now have, not just with her, but with the city of Chicago and some of the leadership within the city.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are you concerned, and I know Suzette and I, we talked a little bit about this, but are you concerned about the violence that you see in the neighboring jurisdiction of Chicago, and how does that affect your public safety, your public safety policy in Broadview?
So Broadview, our crime is very, very low. The biggest crime we have is retail theft because we have a shopping center. When you look at the crime.
Now I gotta come to Broadview. You might at this point. If that's the biggest crime, Madam Mayor, please.
I'm saying.
For us. I'm just saying for us. But, and in our reality, I just believe in the concept, everybody that live here, we all have to be alert. We all have to look out for our police officers. We have to be engaged. We got to let people know when something happened, especially the police department when they're doing the investigative reports. And, as Black Americans, some of us don't like to engage the police and don't like to, tell on what's happening or what's going on. They don't want nobody to know what's going on. So that's a problem when we talk about crime within the Black community, the no snitch. So we have to, address that from a different angle, but we're fortunate enough we don't have a lot of high crime. But we do have crime, and we have had carjackings in our community, and we just want people to be vigilant and be alert on their surroundings. That's how we combat crime, is we have to get rid of the no snitch within our own community to solve some of these crimes.
Absolutely. We got about 30 seconds left, Madam Mayor. First and foremost, I'm so grateful for your time to be with us. Talk to us, put it out there in terms of why Broadview, Illinois is such a special and unique place. And, if there are some things that we as the larger community of Black folks in this country can do to support the work that's being done there.
So thank you. I want to thank you all for your time today. I appreciate the conversation that we have. I've always said it when I got into office, I gave us a hashtag Broadview Strong, because I sincerely believe that we are the strongest community in the state of Illinois. We have broken down so many barriers as it relates to health initiatives. We started the Tour Day Proviso, which creates health and wellness, transportation, and tourism within our community, within the Proviso Township. Most recently, we've tapped into our environmental space as we look at solar panels, EV charging station, environmental, air quality, water, sustainability with our cross-community climate collaboration with 15 communities that we brought together to be a part of this initiative. And most recently, I'm just super excited about the topic of mental health. My team and I was in a training today. That's why I'm dressed down, but we were in a training today talking about youth mental health and being trained on how we can address the issues, because we rely so much on the professionals that we don't have access to, but we should be the ones that could intervene or intercede to save somebody's life from them committing suicide. So my team have taken adult mental health training as well as the youth. We wrapped it up with the youth today. So I'm pretty excited about the work that we're doing in the village of Broadview to help our community. But not only that, when we're not in Broadview, we are also able to help someone else.
And is it important for you to grow the community of Broadview, or do you want to keep it at a kind of a small town type of feel?
Well, I wish we could grow, but we are landlocked in the village of Broadview. So, we probably cannot do no more than probably 9,500 to 10,000 residents. And I'm happy to share the space because we have a large workforce space. So if people have to have somewhere to live, they can live in the neighboring towns that we border with, but they can come to Broadview and work, and we're going to love them just like they live here.
There it is. There it is. Suzette, what does that sound like to you, ma'am? I know we got to
listen. I'm gonna have to pat my bags and go check out Bluffview. Congratulations on all your hard work and continued success. I'm glad you kind of laid out the framework of what it took to get to become a mayor. You just didn't pop out of nowhere. Okay. You have the relationships, you have the acumen and the background and management and those type of things. That's why you're rocking it. So congratulations and continued success to you.
Thank you. Well, you all are more than welcome to visit anytime. I'll make sure that you have all my contact information, and let's stay connected. I think it's important that we have conversations like this as we talk about Black leadership and how we change the narrative to take it to the next level, but not leaving anybody out and not being, exclusive or inclusive to any race of people, but just letting them know that we're here and we standing on the principles that our ancestors founded us on. So I'll stand on some strong shoulders, and I'm not. Absolutely. And it's not no back down time right now.
There it is. There it is. Madam Mayor Katrina Thompson, the great mayor of the city of Broadview, Illinois. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor, for your time. We look forward to reconnecting with you soon. And may God bless you in your efforts. But thank you again for being with us this afternoon.
Well, God bless you, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more conversation. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Just want to make a quick announcement before we move on to our next conversation. I want to let you know, folks, that Black Star Network can now be found on Amazon. Folks, if you thought that these conversations were just going to stay limited, you are sadly mistaken. And we're now streaming live right now on Amazon Fire TV. All you got to do is say, Alexa, play news from Black Star Network. And guess what? Whoop, whoop. It happens right there for you, folks. You find The Culture, Get Wealthy, The Black Table with Dr. Carr, and so many of other dynamic shows and programs and special live streams happening right there on Amazon. So if you have not had a chance to check us out, make sure you check us out there on Amazon Fire TV as we are streaming live now, taking the conversations and about our history, our culture, the future of Black America, and the impact that Black folks are continuing to make on this country to the next level. Again, we want you to join us and watch us as we stream live on Amazon Fire TV. All right, there it is. And that's how it looks right there. And you don't just need a Roku. You can look at that. That's the way my TV screen looks. But it is such a dope situation that we got great platform that we're streaming on, and it gives us an opportunity to take the conversations farther and in a much longer space to connect with more people. So again, folks, make sure y'all check us out on Black Star Network on Amazon Fire TV. All right, folks, I wanted to have a conversation about another announcement that was made earlier today with attorney Ben Crump, and I want to bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into the frame here as we talk about this. First and foremost is that I'm still vibing off of the fact that we had that dope court conversation with Madam Mayor Katrina Thompson about Broadview, 15 minutes outside of Chicago.
I know. That's it. That's actually
like a nice little place to live.
Yes. I am grateful, confident, so much going for her. Man. And I'm grateful that she's standing out as an example of what real Black leadership should be like.
Absolutely. And I honestly thought she was going to say, "Oh, we're about like 2 hours away."
That's what I thought too. She down the street.
I'm like, minutes, I was like,
maybe we could go to Broadview. No, that's amazing.
Cool. But you know what, though? I found like even in LA, there are like a lot of smaller cities outside of Los Angeles, right? That are, once you drive through them, you're just like, oh,
you don't even know. Yeah.
Small town feel. You still got the amenities of the big city, but it still has a small town feel. So I'm definitely feeling that. But I wanted to talk about this case that attorney Ben Crump has decided to announce. He announced this earlier today, which is that he has officially filed a lawsuit against the state of Florida, particularly against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. What's the word that you've been hearing about this? Ben Crump is now on the case to fight against the Florida governor for, this exclusion
blocking
of history.
Yeah. Yes,
and rejecting African American studies. And I don't know if Keenan, if we can pull up any of that press conference or anything, but just let me know if we can get it. But I'm interested. This is your neck of the woods, Suzette.
Absolutely. I couldn't wait till we get on this because I am very, very invested in what is happening. Of course, many of you have seen that headline that the College Board has put a proposal forward to offer a different type of AP class, another of its many, in African American studies, and that our governor and the Department of Education has rejected said course, saying that it lacked, quote unquote, educational value. Now, of course, we have a legal framework in place. We have a law, it's known as the Stop Woke Law, where the state legislature, the state house, and the state senate has passed that prevents any teaching in a classroom that will make one of a race who is the same race as some past transgressor feel uncomfortable. It's very vague. It's very broad. And most of us who watched that kind of come down the pike in 2021 knew that there were eventually going to be, and there already have been, legal challenges to this law. But now here it is being used as a tool to stop AP African American studies. I want to suggest that everyone go look at this press conference that Ben Crump had. I was so hyped, Farajii. I'm not going to lie. I'm hyped right now. Okay. I was watching it on Ben Crump's IG. His IG live was also, along with several local outlets carrying it live as it was held in the Florida Capitol. But there were several leaders, in addition to 3 plaintiffs, and I want to call out their names. One is a 10th grader named Elijah Edwards, an 11th grader named Juliet Heckman. She goes to Leon High School up there in Tallahassee, along with her classmate, Miss Victoria McQueen, who was also an 11th grader at Leon High School. And when I saw them, I was like, Lord, thank you. The future is very bright, because in order to file the lawsuit, you have to have standing, right? You have to be directly impacted by the actions of the State Board of Education or the governor. So they needed 3 brave young people to step forward, and these 3 have chosen to become a part of history. So Ben Crump, along with his legal team, had, again, a very successful press conference earlier today, around 1 Eastern. He and I think it was like 3 other attorneys spoke, including other state representatives. Shout out to State Senator Chevron Jones from here in Miami, as well as State Senator Rosalind Osgood from up in Broward and Fort Lauderdale. He was surrounded by a multitude of racial backgrounds, leadership, leadership positions, as well as ethnicities, etc. What I saw on the IG Live and what you can see on YouTube was that there was solidarity and allyship across the board, which is super important to defeat this type of draconian measure that's basically trying to tell people what they can and can't learn in Florida schools.
So, we're working to see if we can just play a little bit of this presser, but I'm wondering, when you handle a character like Ron DeSantis, you got to fight fire with fire. You got to be very politically savvy. How much, and I mean, you can keep it 100 with us, Suzette, how much of a difference will this lawsuit make, even with the powerful name of a Ben Crump and with other, state and local leaders present? How much will it really make in the larger conversation of what Ron DeSantis is imposing on the school system in Florida?
If I can keep it real, I think
I want you to keep it real.
I think he's enjoying it. I think this is a benefit to him because it keeps his name in the national spotlight. To have someone of the stature of a Ben Crump file a lawsuit, have a press conference on your doorstep right there in the state capitol, and kind of rallying this diverse, multi-ethnic, multiracial coalition to quote unquote stand against, or I want to say fight you. You think of yourself as kind of, I want to say like almost like I don't know who's the Goliath, but the David and the Goliath kind of allegory. I think he sees himself as standing on what he thinks is the right wing's desire for this, I guess, erasure of all things quote unquote woke. But we know woke has been used as a synonym, not in the act itself, but just in terms of how it's being used in the public discourse for many times anti-Blackness, meaning that you cannot say anything about the accurate history of what took place in America. And so when he has this opportunity now to kind of be in the bullseye of such a legal heavyweight such as Ben Crump, I think he's probably counting it as a win, honestly, because of the PR, because it puts him again in that national spotlight and allows him to remain in the news cycle for a little bit longer. And again, maybe for him, it may play a role in giving him a stronger position with his base and what he thinks they desire. So I think it will have an impact in terms of what hopefully the state Supreme Court, or if it makes it up federally to the higher levels of the appellate bench. What really needs to happen is that we need a ruling to say this is in fact, yes, an infringement on First Amendment rights of those students, of those who would teach these classes. We really need to hear from the judiciary if we're going to make any progress. And I do think that is a possibility with this lawsuit.
So the other part of this is the fact that this is coming from the Florida Department of Education. And I would have thought, Suzette, this would have been they would have been less biased in this, that they represent educators and teachers, right? And I think I read in another report where the teachers union down in the state of Florida are like, I don't know if they're divided over this or if they're kind of lockstep with the governor's efforts, but it seems like they are just kind of rubber stamping instead of saying, hey, Mr. Governor, this is not the right thing to do for the interest of education, versus the governor just using them as his political tool. How does that work out?
Well, in Florida, it's all political because when the governor takes office, he appoints the department heads, the Department of Health, for example, Department of Insurance, as well as the Department of Education. Those are his appointees. So they're not necessarily neutral people when it comes to making decisions. And again, they are abiding by a law that has actually been passed.
Wow.
So unfortunately, this is the issue, that we have a law on the books that states that you cannot teach anything that's going to make people uncomfortable within, this framework of talking about race. So it's going to be always something that is politically beneficial to the governor, because the governor, again, the way our system is set up in Florida, it's like those appointees align with his beliefs and are oftentimes there to implement the governor's agenda when it comes to reforming education, et cetera.
All right, so we're going to do this. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, Suzette, we're going to play a little bit of what Attorney Ben Crump said today. Also, I want us to have this other part of the conversations is while Attorney Crump has filed this lawsuit against the Florida governor, Bethune-Cookman. We've been talking about this HBCU down in Florida. How does this conversation affect the reality of those students that student leaders have protested against their own administration for that HBCU and getting things done? And I'm seeing a connection here, Suzette. I'm seeing that as much as we're talking about making sure that Black folks, Black students, white students learn about the full context of Black history, you have this HBCU that seems to be falling in on itself, going against the students. And so, I would love to get your take on that. If you can help us make the connection. It may not be no connection.
No, I'm about to say it's a lot going on.
You know what I'm saying? It may not be no connection. I might be reaching. You know what I'm saying? But
we can go there though. We can go.
I want to pick your brain because the students are protesting there. You know what I mean? And they want to see some level of action. They want to get some situations resolved. So we're talking about fighting for black people and Black power, and then you got Black people fighting against other Black people.
Well, we
welcome to Florida. Welcome to Florida. All right, look, stay with us. That conversation, of course, your take as well. We'd love to get your comments. So post your comments in the chat. Streaming live on YouTube and Facebook and Black Star Network. And of course, we're streaming on Amazon. So stay with us. That conversation continues right here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back. We have been talking about Attorney Ben Crump taking a big step in filing a lawsuit against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for stopping some elements of Black history from being taught in Florida schools. And these are talking about that advanced placement courses that have been under scrutiny, where the governor, Ron DeSantis, has instructed the Department of Education of Florida to instruct teachers that, hey, if you start teaching this is against policy. This is against the law to not teach certain parts of Black history. So Attorney Ben Crump and other state leaders, Florida leaders, have decided to say enough is enough. This is wrong. I want to play for you very quickly just a little bit of what was said at today's press conference of this announcement from Attorney Ben Crump, and we'll continue the conversation with our System Culture crew member Suzette Speaks. So check this out, Attorney Ben Crump.
Thank you all for being here, especially to the leaders, the clergy, and to all of the activists in the community who said, hell no. We have to remember that it's so important, this cause, this fight, so much is at stake. I'm Attorney Ben Crump, along with Attorney Craig Wisenhunt, and with Attorney Precious Chavez, and the NAACP, as well as the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. We're here to give notice to Governor DeSantis that if he does not negotiate with the College Board to allow AP African American Studies to be taught in the classrooms across the state of Florida, that these 3 young people will be the lead plaintiffs. And you all need to remember their names, because it's their courageous tenacity and their intellect that reminds me, Reverend Holmes, many of the examples that were shown to the world by a young John Lewis, a young Julian Bond, a young Fannie Lou Hammond. You will remember the names of Elijah Edwards, of Victoria Hetman, of Victoria McQueen, and Juliet Hetman. Now, this is what it's about. It is about them. This is what the fight is for. Never, ever forget that. And the fact that they're coming forward in this consequential moment in history can never be taken lightly. Now, you're going to hear from them in a minute after you hear from my co-counsel, Craig Wisenhunt, who has previously been victorious in challenging Governor DeSantis with a mask mandate. But I think Senator Osgood, I do think it's important, though, that we remember what Carter G. Woodson, known as the father of Black history, said. He said, if a race has no history, if a race has no worthwhile traditions that are respected and taught to the youth, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world. And it stands in danger, Senator Jones, of being exterminated. And so the question really is this, brothers and sisters. Are we going to let Governor DeSantis or anybody exterminate Black history from the classroom? Senator Hill, will we let Governor DeSantis or anybody exterminate Black history in the classrooms across America? No. Yeah, what this really is about is saying you cannot exterminate us. You cannot exterminate our culture, and you can never exterminate the value of our children to this world. Governor DeSantis, are you really trying to lead us into an era akin to communism that provides censorship and free thoughts. Oh yeah, that's where you're trying to go. Or are we going to make sure that Governor DeSantis understands that we will stand on the American principles of the free exchange of ideas, whether those are ideals and culture of European history, whether those are ideals and culture of German history, whether those are ideals and culture of Japanese history, whether those are ideals and culture of Brazilian, Canadian, everybody who is here in America, you have a right to have your culture, your history respected and taught to the children of America. Yeah.
Attorney Ben Crump, that was from a press conference earlier today in Tallahassee, Florida, the state capital. And Suzette, you know, now I was looking to look at Attorney Crump's IG page, and he's saying that, you know, if the governor continues to go down this path, and this is what he said on his IG. So I want to make sure that this is clear. But Attorney Crump said, if DeSantis continues down this misguided path of censorship, we will have no choice but to take legal action. So is that to say that legal action has not officially been taken, that there hasn't been something filed, or is that to, you know, I want to make sure that we're clear.
Yeah, what I think it is, and based on what I heard throughout the press conference, is that if the governor does not engage the college board, then they are prepared to file this lawsuit on behalf of.
So they're just announcing that they're preparing to file a lawsuit.
Yes,
but
I think they're giving him like another chance or one more try to engage and fix it, so to speak. And if not, they're going to move forward.
So this is interesting because I mean, and I know some of our online culture crew members, they were asking like why we are not seeing even more people kind of signing on to this. I mean, especially for Attorney Crump. He didn't just say black folks. He said, you know, Japanese and an Asian American community. He brought to, of course, he said white community. But should we expect this rainbow coalition to stand behind Attorney Crump's, announcement? Should we expect that?
Absolutely. I think if you are looking at his legal team, I think one of his attorneys, perhaps I don't want to make an assumption, is of the Jewish faith. His one of his if you watch it, the second person that spoke on the tape during the press conference and made the legal arguments, one of the plaintiffs, I will note, Miss Juliet Heckman, happens to be a white young lady who is also a plaintiff because she wants to learn more about African American history. If I look at some of the most popular AP classes, did you know that you could take AP photography, among other history, AP United States history, European history? It seems as if there are arguments to be made whether this is disparate treatment under the law, right? Whether people with different backgrounds are being treated differently by applying a different standard to what is deemed to have educational value. And again, that mixed with the Florida legislation called Stop Woke is what the court will have to decide upon. But to answer your question, I do think if you saw throughout the press conference, it was probably about 45 minutes. There were many people of various backgrounds present. And again, the plaintiffs are diverse as well, an African-American man, or boy, I think he's 17.
Yeah.
2 17-year-olds and I think a 16-year-old. Yeah. So yes, I do expect if I see the trend that we're experiencing in Florida when it comes to these type of issues, we do have a diverse coalition that show up.
All right, so I'm gonna go back to this point that this is all happening in the same space at the same time. You do have the culture, anti-blackness, that culture war is being waged, and then you got the HBCU situation that is happening right now. And I'm trying to figure out, Suzette, how do we make sense of all of these things, right? Like, how do you make sense that, yes, the governor wants to restrict these AP courses, But then at the same time, you got Black folks, Black leadership at an HBCU that seems to be negligent of the students' needs and their health and safety and well-being right there on campus. And it's like, for those who might be looking outside, might be saying like, well, y'all want us to fix this, but y'all can't fix that. Am I thinking about this really in a weird way?
I think some of the issues that are happening at Bethune-Cookman University seem to be somewhat more localized in terms of their origins, and with respect to leadership, that you would have to ask people who are on the inside. This is just outside looking in, pure speculation, because there are people that are going to disagree with me and say, this is a product of funding. I stand with Mr. Ed Reed. I think a lot of what he said had merit. I think the way he said it, again, led to the outcomes that we saw where they rescinded his possible contract. And again, I think as a head coach, for him, he had to be a little bit more disciplined when it comes to his public facing message. I don't think he was quite yet aware that he had stepped into that role as soon as it was announced, even though the paperwork wasn't signed yet, and that some of his language and maybe how he presented some of the issues was indeed not appropriate of a head football coach of a program such as BCU. I will say, I do think that many who are involved, and I'll kind of leave my sources to remain anonymous, are really having a problem with the management of the BCU board, saying that there are internal problems, internal struggles that are not new, and that even having an interim president for more than 2 years is a sign that something is wrong in terms of day-to-day management, and that falls in the hands of both that president. But again, if you're interim, you really cannot move too swiftly or too strongly because you're trying to keep your job, because you're still in the application process, so to speak.
Right.
So you have a board of trustees, and again, I am not going to disparage anyone on that board. You have Judge Belvin Perry, who was the judge in the Casey Anthony trial, who is the chair. Now, I didn't know, I was doing my own little research, that he had actually applied to become the president of BCU, and it was turned down. So he is now serving as the chair of the board. So there are different factions within that board that seem to, be focused on things that are not necessarily where the student body wants them to focus. And I do think, again, this is not new. I've heard from growing up in Florida, people going away to colleges and specific Bethune-Cookman College, as it was known at the time, and having issues with their dorms, having issues with administration and other things. So it might be a little bit more localized and systemic, as opposed to necessarily related to Mr. DeSantis or so-called funding issues. But when you are in litigation with your alumni association, when you are trying to stop, those things lead to less funding because you're not fundraising based on the people who actually went to the school and have a vested interest in the school. There are a lot of other issues, I think, kind of floating around. So I think it's a little apples and oranges, but I think locally there, we got to help as much as we can as a community to bolster them, but they also have to try to work, whether it needs some new eyes and some people that come in and consult, but they have to work on getting their house in order and deliver the best services, the best dormitories, and the best other, facilities to their student athletes and to their students. That's just was what the basic requirements of what you're paying $20,000 or $30,000 for. So if they're having issues and they need help, I think that's something that we need to address, both within, the state system, the state university system, but also locally. I think there are other issues going on there.
I got another follow-up question for that, but when we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, folks, we're going to have one more part of this conversation as we're discussing Attorney Ben Crump's move to possibly sue the governor of the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, for the exclusion of AP African American Studies. We'll have that, and of course, we'll talk about these latest developments with the Bethune-Cookman University. So stay with us. We want to hear from you. Make sure you post your comments in the chat, and let's get a couple of comments from the online culture crew. And stay with us. It's the culture right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
A lot of stuff that we're not getting, you get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about Attorney Ben Crump's latest legal move to possibly file a lawsuit against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for his exclusion of AP Advanced Placement African American Studies courses, limiting the conversation and the curriculum of what's being taught about African American history as it relates to a number of topics from reparations to social justice issues. I've been talking to my sister Suzette Speaks, checking in from out of Florida to kind of give us some latest highlights and the latest developments of this effort and so many other things that are happening down in the Sunshine State. And folks, we want to hear from you. So make sure you post your comments in the chat section of YouTube and Facebook, and that way we can include your thoughts into the discussion. All right, let me go to my man Doug. Doug checked in and said, look, at Willie Frazier, my guy Willie, he was talking to him. He said, that's a complete different course, which it should be. Sex ed and African-American studies are complete different subjects and should be separate. This is one of the things that, and I appreciate you, Doug and Willie, for having a conversation. And I see a number of you are talking about, you know, the separation between the two. Because y'all remember yesterday I talked about how the governor in Florida said that, you know, queer theory, as they call it, queer theory and gender identity, those things being discussed as part of the overall curriculum of these courses. And we heard from Brother Michael in Hotep making a point that there were many topics that were a part of the larger curriculum that they call movements and debates. And so queer theory is one of those topics where they go into the history of the LGBTQ community. But we got to also understand, too, that that is part of Black history, as a lot of our notable heroes and sheroes, a lot of our great leaders were a part of that community. And so, you know, it still leaves open the conversation, or leaves open the door, where we're asking the question, you know, how do we fit that part of our history into this larger mix? And this is something that I think needs to be determined by teachers and not by Governor Ron DeSantis. I want to bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into the fold here as we're having this conversation, because this thing continues to kind of go into a lot of different spaces. Janelle checked in and said, African American studies primarily focuses on the study of the history, culture, and politics of the people. You can't talk about history of a people without talking about what makes people people. Right, Janelle? Right. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, jump in.
I'm going to jump in, and I love me some Doug. Doug is also a moderator on my YouTube channel. Shout out to Doug.
Oh, nice.
He's one of my best
your folks over. I'm bringing this is love right here.
He's coming to show love. He also sent me this clip with Governor DeSantis talking about this issue with why he did not support this as an LGBT and queer community curriculum being involved. But I also want to point people, and I wish I could give you this to put up, Keenan, as far as the Department of Education went point by point in the curriculum as to why they rejected it. So that was one, Doug, for sure. And that was a key talking point that Governor DeSantis used from his bully pulpit. But when it came to topics that would be covered, Black Lives Matter, or the movement for Black lives, there were many rejections from the Department of Education based on, and this is what they argue, the Movement for Black Lives is an organization with stated objectives that include eliminating prisons and jails, ending pretrial detention, and concluding that the, quote, war on Black, trans, queer, gender nonconforming, and intersex people is being waged. So they're kind of conflating an issue, I think, where they want us as a community to focus on, oh, this is why he doesn't want African American studies. Do not be fooled. It is also because the very basis of Black feminist thought. There's also 4.30. This is parts of what would be taught in the AP African American Studies program. Yeah. Reparations. Their objection to reparations being discussed. All points and resources in this study advocate for reparations. This is why they're against it. There is no critical perspective or balancing opinion in this lesson. So there are also other objections not mentioned within that press conference. And I respect you, Doug. I know you also going to do your research as well. But please look up. They went point by point in terms of the different topics and different headings that would be covered in this class. And there was way more to the rejection than just the queer or extension of any kind of gender studies within the curriculum. They objected to Black study and the Black struggle in the 21st century. They went by authors that they objected to within each component of the study. So again, I don't want us to get hung up on what may be the same. The Black struggle is not the same as the LGBT struggle. That is something that is really complex. There are lots of overlap because a lot of our key heroes in the civil rights movement happen to be queer. That's one thing that we're not necessarily acknowledging when we talk about, well, we got to separate. All right, I don't want to, let's have a history lesson here today, guys. So we have to really be careful that we're not being thrown a red herring so that we're hung up on, oh, well, that's why he didn't want it. Absolutely not. Look at the point by point, lesson by lesson breakdown that the Department of Education gave as to why they're so-called rejecting this area of study. And that's why it lacks, according to them, educational value.
All right, so and I'm so happy that you made that comparison and really made that point because I think that's an excellent point. And I want to kind of go back to this whole Bethune-Cookman thing because for me, Suzette, I'm seeing that this effort to bring the AP classes is going to open up a conversation about the value of Black educational institutions. This is the the connecting dots that I'm seeing here. Now, again, I could be really wrong on this, folks. I can be way off base here, right? But I just seem like, because I think this governor is super petty, that he's going to be like, oh, yeah, we're not going to do these AP courses. And while we're at it, we're going to reduce the funding even more for HBCUs in the state because they're putting out a political agenda. They're teaching their students this and that we don't agree with. And then he might look at the situation down in Bethune-Cookman and say, oh, and they have health issues. There's mold. This place needs to be shut down. Like, am I wrong in thinking that that one thing could lead to another in this respect, Suzette?
I pray, Farajii, it doesn't. I pray
it doesn't either.
That it doesn't. However, whether you might be,
I'm looking at petty DeSantis here.
Listen, I think again, some of the issues within the leadership of BCU have brought this almost on themselves. Like, it was okay when it was kept quiet and students weren't saying anything. But again, I think in different circles, if you know people who have students here or are students at BCU, this is not new. And so a light was shown brightly through, Coach Ed Reed, and they really didn't have an answer for it except to say, there was a hurricane and the hurricane caused extra damage and they're still trying to deal with, these issues. I don't think that's enough of an excuse, hear me out, to kind of answer for the long-term issues that many have stated have allegedly existed there. So I do think, once that can of worms got open, and while we are also discussing, as you pointed out, based on the Stop Woke Act being passed in Florida, now the law of the land, that there can be more scrutiny, not only based on the educational curriculum, but now based on what we're seeing in the public sphere, that is open. Our issues are on Front Street, right? Yeah. I say our because, again, I want any type of protection for spaces where Black students can thrive and receive a proper education. But again, it seems as if, and that's why the students are protesting, not my words. I'm looking on the local news there, coming out of Daytona, coming out of Orlando, watching students say, this is not what we're paying for. This should not be. So I do think they run that risk, Farajii.
And that's, Suzette, and that's the point. The point is that, like you just said in the beginning part of your remarks, that the leadership at BCU brought it on themselves, right? Like you and this is, look, man, we got to think long term. Like, I'm not just thinking about the short war, the short battle. I'm thinking about the long war. And when you're talking about dealing with the political climate that you're facing down in Florida, and I'm talking about just being Black, the anti-Black climate that's in Florida at this moment, then you got to think about, well, what's at stake? What could be on a chopping block? Okay, yesterday it's the AP courses. Today it might be something else. Tomorrow it might be something else. And there's, to me, it doesn't seem far-fetched that we might be seeing some very drastic moves, whether it's in funding of certain programs, whether it's in resource support of certain programs, whether it's in muzzling the voices of Black leaders, whether they're young or old. We don't know. I mean, we're just in that time frame in this country. And Florida is serving as the leader of the culture wars right now when it comes to anti-Blackness thought.
Mm-hmm. Anti-Black education as well. Mm-hmm.
Anti-Black education. Mm-hmm. You got this, they call it what y'all call it, the woke bill that puts you to sleep.
Mm-hmm. It's cold language.
Florida is leading the charge on it. And we talked about it in Missouri. It's happening. Texas is happening. Other states around the country are considering the same type of move as we speak. So I'm looking at like the pebble, like the impact of the pebble in the pond. It just creates a ripple effect here. And from that vantage point, how we need to get prepared. I'm just saying we need to get prepared in terms of knowing the information, knowing what's going on, which is why we have this media and that's why we're having this conversation. And then also prepared on, okay, what resources? Do we have policies to stop this from happening? Do we have organizations that are willing to organize and get on the ground to start building coalitions with people. Like, we need to figure it out, because we're sitting around waiting for, say, President Biden and Vice President Harris to intervene in a state situation. That's not going to happen. If we expect Attorney Ben Crump to intervene in a state situation, it's not going to happen. It's got to be the people that are impacted the most. Going back to that old thing, and I'm going to get you and let you speak on this. It goes back to that old saying that those closest to the problem are the ones closest to the solution. The people of Florida have to stand up and say enough is enough. Black people, white people, Latino people, the people of Florida, y'all going to have to say enough is enough.
I agree with you on so many points you just made, Farajii. I do think this is why this lawsuit, to bring it full circle, is super important. If we do not draw a line in the sand now and have the courts determine that this, in fact, violates First Amendment rights and other arguments that are being made, we are going to possibly see other state leaders try us and try to promote or implement the similar type of policy and legislation. That's why this lawsuit is super important. We have to create a line in the sand, and hopefully we can do that through the court system. I will say to you, there is a lot of activism. When I look at Georgia and other states, I'm a little bit jealous, right? Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, they're really kind of awake when it comes to what's really happening. And I think the last election with Raphael Warnock and everybody, seeing the great chasm between Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock really kind of galvanized people. I think sometimes here we have, and I will say, especially in Florida, when we're talking about politics, Democrats have suffered so many losses back to back when it has come to governor's races, when it has come to United States Senate, Miss Val Demings and others that many thought had more of a chance than what the polls showed when it came to the actual count on election day and the actual turnout, such that I do think there is more apathy in communities of color than there should be. Now, that's not the same across the board. Our Hispanic brothers and sisters are very much engaged, depending on the race and depending on the issues on the ballot. But I do agree with you with all the stressors when it comes to economics on our minority communities, when it comes to just surviving. Again, we don't have any type of guaranteed work here in Florida. We are at will employment. People can, so-called right to work means actually right to be fired. State, we have, again, some of the highest housing costs. I think Miami always makes the list when it comes to difficulty in terms of owning a place when you're making, minimum or even medium income wages. And when people are worried about the economics of their life, they're not necessarily, Farajii, immediately going to be able to engage politically. You got to have money to drive up to Tallahassee, right? You got to have the time off. You got to be able to work. You got to be, to balance living, raising your family and paying your bills while all this, political strife is going on around you. So I won't use that as perhaps an excuse, but I will explain a little bit in terms of sometimes the difficulty in getting people engaged and involved the way they need to be. But notwithstanding, we have a lot of students. We have a lot of people who can afford to become more involved the way we saw in the summer of 2020, so that the governor knows, so that other lawmakers know that this is not what we tolerate here in Florida. Like, we say it a lot, but I agree with you. Looking around, sometimes it can be frustrating because it's like, oh, okay, we're all mad, or we all share the article online and we kind of talk about it within our own homes and our circles, but no one really, I think what's frustrating right now in politics is the people who seem to be further on the right are more committed when it comes to their cause, more open, more in your face, and more, driven to accomplish their goals than people that are more moderate. So I think we have to work on changing that as a community.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Suzette, always enjoy having conversations like this with you. Always happy that you are part of the team here, keeping us updated. You are an essential person that we need, because you're right there, right in the mix of things, from your law experience to your hosting experience, research experience. Look, I'm just grateful that you're able to join us week to week. bringing us up to date on what's happening in the state of Florida. Folks, make sure y'all follow Suzette Speaks on her YouTube station.
Yes, thank you.
Subscribe to her shows, dynamic shows, talking about a wide range of things that is truly, truly for the culture. But make sure y'all follow her. And Suzette, God willing, we'll reconnect with you next week. And I'm sure there are going to be some new developments we're going to have to report on and speak about. So thank you so much for being with us.
Excellent show. Thank you, Farajii.
Hey,
thanks, everybody. Thanks for
Appreciate
watching.
you. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. We got to get up out of here, but make sure y'all do your due diligence. Check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure you follow us on our social media platforms at Black Star Network on IG and Twitter. Make sure you give, because this is not cheap. And certainly, folks, we want you to be fully invested in what we're doing and the conversations that we're having. So, again, go to blackstarnetwork.com and also follow me at The Real Farajii on IG and Farajii on Twitter. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on Black Star Network, on YouTube, Facebook, and, of course, on Amazon Fire TV. So stay tuned for that show. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.